Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am Jennifer Steinke. I'm the chairperson for TAMS, the Travel and Meeting Society. We are going to get started in just a minute as everyone kind of funnels in our participants, and then we'll get this party started. So we'll give it another minute. Hope everyone's enjoying their day. The summer, it's really hot right now, so hopefully y'all are staying cool. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, again, thank you everyone for participating. We are super excited to have you here for our second TAMS talk with our founding partner. It's SAP Concur. We've got Ralph Kalunga here, and he and I are just going to have a laid back little chat all about travel today. So I want to give a huge shout out to SAP Concur. They were one of our first couple founding partners. That's really a supply base that supports the Travel and Meeting Society organization through their thought leadership and alike. And we really, really appreciate being just so grateful for a company like Concur, a big leading organization in the travel space, to be a supporter of TAMS. So thank you so much. And thank you, Ralph, for joining. It's great to have you here. All right, so let's get right to it.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So Ralph, tell me a little bit. Let's start with I like to start on the personal side and end on the personal note. So We'll start just talking a little bit about Ralph and your career. You've been in the industry for a really long time. I've known you for years. Certainly a thought leader, and as your title is thought leader in travel and expense at SAP Concur. Tell me a little bit about your journey, how you got here, why you stayed, all those good things.
You know, it's been an exciting time for the last 40 plus years. And I started off actually in the hotel industry and working for Hilton, and was recruited by Advanced Micro Devices to come over to manage their meetings and events actually. And so I joined AMD, and this was, back in 1984. And so moved to Silicon Valley and was at AMD for about 13 and a half years. And within that time frame, took over the travel, expense operations, as well as the company stores, fitness centers, cafeterias. So we became corporate services, if you will. And from there, I was recruited to join Cisco Systems to take over their meetings, travel, and expense program. So did that and was at Cisco for roughly about 7.5 years, and then migrated over to Oracle, actually. So was at Oracle for about 3.5 years, running their travel and card program, as well as meetings. And then from there, went with a small little company called Salesforce.com. And
just a little company.
Yeah, well, at the time I joined, it was 2,800 employees. So yeah, it was quite a rocket ship and quite a ride for the 7 years that I was there. And then when I was leaving Salesforce, Steve Singh asked if I would join Concur, so I did. And then when I was at Concur, of course, right before I joined Concur, SAP had made the acquisition, and Steve asked me if I still wanted to come over, and I said absolutely. So came over, and again, it's been a great ride as well. And I ultimately became vice president of global mobility, so I was in charge of both the travel as well as the corporate car program, as well as the corporate card program. And then after about 2 years of that engagement, I decided I wanted to come back to SAP Concur, because I was working actually for SAP at the time. And SAP Concur was kind of a separate entity, if you will, of the company. And I decided I wanted to come back into this present role, which I thought that, being somewhat of and I actually kind of created this role and sold that to the leadership team at both SAP and SAP Concur, that we needed somebody with a travel management background and travel expense background to come help, if you will, sell our solutions to different various customers and help the sales teams. So that's really what my role is. I'm kind of like this, again, evangelist who goes out and talks about our solutions at events such like this, as well as industry events. And also just, I support the sales organizations and marketing organizations with regards to our messaging and driving, being a company spokesperson as well.
That's fantastic. So
yeah,
you've had a long history in the industry, right? 40
Yes.
years in the business,
Yes.
so to speak. It's not been easy the last couple of years, right? We have been, I think, and I've been in the industry 30 plus years. So we've probably taken a lot of the similar rides and challenges, but the last couple
Yeah.
of years were probably the worst we've ever seen.
True.
And we're coming out of that. Talk to me a little bit about, as we move from pandemic more to endemic, and we've just, thank goodness, finally removed the restrictions coming back into the United States. Talk to me about how you see the business travel landscape, both as a thought leader, but also as an organization like SAP Concur, because obviously it was challenging for you guys too during that time period.
No doubt. Yeah. Certainly, as you said, we've seen the evolution, what I would call it, of corporate travel management over the last certainly 40 plus years. And the travel landscape continues to evolve, whether that's, directly impacted with technology, whether that is, I guess any type of, impact of a disaster. And I've almost always, learned to take the premise of that. It's not a question of if something's going to happen. It's really a question of more of where, when, magnitude, and that can be anything from natural disasters to acts of terrorism to infectious disease and all these sorts of things. So I think you always have to be looking at the fact that there's always going to be something. And I also couple that with the fact that each generation has had challenges that we've all had to face, and each generation to each generation, those challenges always seem like they are the most the hardest to deal with. But with that comes opportunity, and I think that's something that we all have to hopefully learn from this. As we are in the endemic phase of this. It really is a matter of how do you take away the thoughts about these are moments of change. These are moments for you to lead, quite frankly, and these are moments for you to seize that opportunity and help really drive to the next level or the next generation of travel management, because it's going to be happening. As we look at Gen Y and Gen Z, it's a matter of how do you now start aligning to what they need, and that's one of the things that I think certainly for SAP Concur, we're looking at how do our solutions help the business community manage their employee spend and really help them make more informed decisions. I think that's ultimately is what we're trying to do each and every day, and it is about that next generation of travel management that drives us. It's about that employee experience. It's about kind of that. And that's really what's driving our roadmap focus going forward is, what is that employee experience? And that's something that we definitely have learned over the years, that we've got to be cognizant of that, and as well as whatever our competition is doing in terms of how do we learn from them as well, and how do we make ourselves better to provide that support that we're out there to do. So
Sure, that's interesting, and you're right. It's when we're in the heat of it, the problem, whatever it is, it seems like it's the worst thing to happen, but something's around the corner. I don't want to know I don't even want to think about what could be worse than the last 2 years.
I agree. Could
be something out there, hopefully not. I'm also curious, what are we going to start calling the generations after Gen Z? Do we go back to A
I'm
and
not
start
sure.
over? I don't know what we're going to do at that point either. So
That's
those
true.
people.
Yep.
But they are very much experience driven and having things in the palm of their hands and just having it their way. I mean, we are definitely challenged with how do we adapt our technologies and our services and the offerings from a travel and expense perspective to meet the needs of the individuals, no matter where they are, because now we have even more generations in the workforce now. So you've got to kind of meet where they are.
No doubt about it. I certainly, from our perspective, SAP Concur, we're committed to reinventing travel. Whether that's again travel expense, invoice management, or how do you simplify and really just create a better experience for your employees. And that's really what we are focusing on, going forward. It's a matter of how do we I think is it's been said many times before. How do you remove those friction points that impact, your travel community, and how do you make that again a much better experience for everybody? Is what you're trying,
Sure.
is what we're trying to look at and do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So part of that is you guys just recently had your travel industry summit.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about any cool new stuff coming out, any key takeaways from that, things that you'd want to share with our buyer and supplier community.
Yeah, certainly from our perspective, what we learned from that was that we the aligning with your employees, sentiment and traveler sentiment is just extremely important. As well as, obviously working within or accommodating this new hybrid workforce that we're all going to have to deal with. Traveler flexibility, that was obviously a very, very important. It came out, as being a very important consideration, as well as sustainability. That was something that, again, we're all contending with, and all having to sit down and look at how do we address sustainability in a meaningful way going forward. We had a lot of different sessions, everything from like, exploring impactful travel trends in travel, to, how you have, one travel program, but you got a lot of different priorities that you're having to deal with, creating modern day travel policies, some real examples and real solutions for fraud that are taking place. And I think, again, as I said about sustainability, transferring those goals into an action plan, and then basically, looking at the different new technologies that are coming out, and which ones do you choose going forward?
Right.
And then, how about also with regards to, as the business landscape has changed, so has the supplier, relationships, and how do you handle those going forward? So those are just some of the sessions that we covered, during our travel industry summit. So, we strongly encourage, those sessions are all recorded. So strongly encourage, anybody who wants to gain some further insight to take a look at those sessions, because I think there's some valuable information within those sessions.
That's great. Did you have any sessions on what everyone's calling the Great Resignation? Now, I know you guys have just issued a study about that, and I want to talk about it because I think one of the things that we're most challenged with from a buyer perspective is hugely increasing costs. We see airfare that's up 40%. We see hotels are up. I mean, everything. I just saw something posted yesterday, maybe from GBTA, about, that we're surpassing pre-pandemic levels of travel, but there's no people. So we have this expectation of service. I'm paying more and getting less. And I think it's super challenging, to try to explain to a traveler, yeah, you're paying 30 or 40% more and you're not getting the same service, or, restaurants aren't open, or things like that. So any insights, especially like what you're hearing from your study and things like that, and how it's really impacting the industry?
Yeah, without question. While there wasn't necessarily a specific session with regards to the Great Resignation, several of the sessions did touch on this very fact. And, it is, I think in many ways, this is something that's affecting all industries, certainly not just the travel industry. I mean, we're seeing this across the board, whether you're going out to eat at restaurants and things of that nature. Literally just this week, I went out to a restaurant, and then there was a sign saying, "We are short of staff, so please, bear with us," which was kind of interesting, just in terms of seeing that right when you walk in the door. But I think that this is, again, as I mentioned before, this is a moment of change, and I think that it's all about, at least from a corporate perspective, as I see it, is it's about embracing employee empowerment here. And if you look at what's causing the resignation, what's causing people to leave the companies, is it because you're not empowering the employees? Is it because you've got draconian policies and processes? Are you driving people out of your company? Right. And so I think it really is, this is, again, that opportunity to seize, upon this generational opportunity to adjust policies to the current business landscape. To again, as I said before, simplifying, automating processes, eliminating friction points for employees, and creating that kind of inclusive environment where employees feel like they're being heard, and are actually helping to make a difference in a positive way, to the company. Our research shows, as an example, 45% of Gen Z employees say, technology is not the only solution to most of the problems. So I think it's looking just beyond technology innovation, but it's more so about understanding the expectation of their workforce and talent pool, and really adjust your policies, to address the most pressing needs of those generations, whether that's workforce flexibility, the shifting company culture, corporate responsibility, social responsibility, transparency and trust. So those are things I think if you're just, as we come out of this, endemic here, if you will, it's not just about getting back to business as before, business as usual, because there has been a paradigm shift. And if you do not adjust to accommodate that, that will only add to this furthering gap between traveler expectations and travel management. And
Sure.
somehow you've got to bridge that gap and bring those two closer together. And that's why understanding your traveler sentiment is so critical and so important, because you need to sit down and align with your travelers as to what their expectations are. And those expectations are generationally driven. Those expectations indeed are, tied to what Gen Z, Gen Y. I mean, I used to call, the millennials, not just Gen Y, but it was Gen Y not, because they were questioning everything that, we were doing. And
Right.
then it got to be to me now, Gen Z is more like Gen Zoom, because they want everything now. It's got to be Zoom, we got to get this done. That has to happen. We got to make these changes. And so again, it's about, it's about seizing that opportunity. It's not so much, again, fighting on the old here, if you will, but it's really embracing the new. It's really saying, okay, how do we focus our energy on, providing what or at least understanding what the new, if you will, the new generations of travelers want, and then how can we best accommodate it. Maybe it's only meeting them halfway, but nonetheless, I still think if you're making efforts, I think that will help aid with regard and not having, or driving people out of your company. And I think that's really, really critically important, especially now.
Sure. I mean, we see that all the time, and we're adapting policies to retain and recruit,
No doubt about it.
people. It's like, well, what's your business class policy, or what's your airline club policy, or what, you know what I mean? They're asking these things in the interview process because there are many opportunities for really well, highly sought after people that we want in our organizations. And it's tough because we have to adapt to that. And yet still we want to remain fiscally responsible in all this. We can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not going to be a free for all either. So,
No
I
question.
think,
Yeah. It's really interesting to me, Jen, with regards to, I recall prior to the pandemic, at the end of 2019, several companies stating that, they wanted all their employees back into the offices. They wanted them into brick and mortar, their brick and mortar locations. And it is amazing to me how, within about a 4 to 6 month time period, as we got into 2020, that had to change to where
right,
everybody was working from home. And then how really by the end of 2020 and into 2021, work from home had morphed into work from anywhere.
yeah,
And so, and in fact, after, as we enter 2022, you now find employers who want to get people back to the offices having to entice employees to come back into the office. It's just really fascinating, and that just gets back to these employees, expect greater flexibility in their workplace, wherever that may be. And
right.
whether that's, again, in the office, at home, or on the road. And travelers overwhelmingly, our data and studies have shown that they want to, return to travel, but really more so under their own terms and conditions versus those of just the company.
Right.
And that's
No,
really fascinating.
it's very, very fascinating. And it's so interesting to think about how, we have to adapt our policies to this. And
Absolutely. Yep.
there's a lot of challenges around the work from anywhere. And, there's lots of stuff in the news about it and everything. But
Yeah,
I
and it's
always say
interesting.
there's a new traveler that's entered.
No doubt.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that you're
and
absolutely no,
and how do
you're
we
absolutely right.
and how do we adapt a policy to a traveler that never traveled before because he was based in the home office, who now lives in Montana? And how does
Yeah,
he or she want to collaborate with
yeah.
their team, and where are they going? Now they're going to all these different places. So costs could technically be up for a whole population of people that never really traveled before. It's going to be interesting to see.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, that was in our recent Wakefield study in the US. It was like 39% of Gen Z business travelers say that their company needs to increase their business travel, if that company is going to be remain viable beyond 2022 even. And
Yeah.
37% of that same said their career would be negatively impacted if they weren't allowed to travel. So it really gets back to, and that's the younger generation that's not used to travel, though they're not your road warriors, but they are saying that they want to see an increase in travel. And at time when budgets are being cut back, really, if you look at travel ROI is being re-imaged or rethought, quite frankly, and a lot more focus on, what is really essential versus non-essential travel is really coming into focus as well. And I've got to also imagine that, if I'm a CFO and over the last 2 years, the billions of dollars that were saved by, in terms of T&E costs by not traveling, and how companies not only, survived the pandemic, but in many cases thrived during the pandemic due to the fact that, utilizing virtual solutions. I've got to weigh out, and in terms of, well, how much travel is truly necessary going forward. I think of, obviously it's essential, but it'll be interesting to see, and I have no doubt it will return back to pre-pandemic levels, further down the road here. But I definitely think that it's something that, that it's going to impact us throughout 2022, obviously into 2023, that we're going to have to be looking at this, and it'll slowly gradual return as I see it, but it is something that we're going to have to contend with.
Yeah, and I think you're right. CFOs were salivating for the last couple of years over all the
Yes.
money
Yeah.
they were saving. But
Yeah,
I
true.
also think it's going to be driven by competition. Once your competitors
No
out
doubt.
there
You
and getting in
bet.
front of your customers, everyone else is going to do it too. So, whoever's first out the gate, we'll see. And we're seeing it now, but
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting times. And I really appreciate all of your insight. And I'm going to change direction a little bit,
Okay.
and I want to go talk a little bit about the partnership with SAP Concur and TAMS. So TAMS is a new society. It actually spawned out of the need for some industry standards during the peak of the pandemic and stuff. But what do you guys at the SAP Concur team hope to garner from partnering with TAMS, and what kind of collaboration would you guys like to see, and how can we better support the industry and you guys as an organization?
Well, I think you just said it, Jennifer. I mean, the business travel community is obviously very important to us, and organizations such as TAMS really help further community, and really that travel community, as well as education around business travel. So certainly our alignment with TAMS makes logical sense to us in terms of how do we sit down and try to sit down and drive, more effective change, try to engage in more conversations with the business travel community in terms of how we can improve, things. Obviously, we're looking at, what's important. We want to understand what's important to the business travel community that we serve, as well as, how can we improve things within our own solutions and services for the greater good of the company, or for greater good of the company and for greater good of the industry, quite frankly.
That's
It's
awesome.
all, it's all about, technology innovation is extremely critical. And I think it's a matter of we want to be innovators, we want to be leaders in that space. And we have to work at that. And I will tell you, we are committed to that without question. That, we want to, obviously be a voice for positive change, as well as, helping companies advance their programs, going forward.
That's great. Thank you. And again, I can't express to you enough our gratitude for all of your support.
Sure.
And we love that. We love our mission is really to educate, to disrupt, to innovate, all of that,
Yeah.
where all voices are equal, where everybody is heard. And so we love that type of stuff. So it's going to be great,
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
forward as we continue to do great work in an amazing industry. So
Yeah.
thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you for your support.
You bet. Pleasure. Yeah.
Now, so now we're going to get to the hardest question,
Okay.
And this is
All
is
right.
what we're going to end on. So get ready,
Okay.
everybody. But I believe probably Elon Musk or somebody is going to figure out time travel at some point in the future. If you could travel anywhere in time, what era would you go to, and who would you seek out once you were to arrive in your time travel? Told you it's gonna be tough.
Oh boy, yeah. I'm very fortunate to have lived through the centuries that I have, right? Or just the decades, I should say,
Yeah.
in terms of as you go through the decades of your life, and to have seen all the advancements and everything. I would probably say I would want to go back in time to probably the 60s and the late 60s, early 70s, just in terms of, it was a time of enlightenment. It was a time of change, and
You didn't have enough
would
fun
have
the first
loved to
time?
have met some of the. Oh, I did, but no, I definitely would. There's certain, whether it's the seeing certain, I love music, and seeing certain groups that are no longer with us, I being able to sit down and meet and just have conversations with some of those individuals would have been certainly a wonderful experience, and certainly something I would have enjoyed, and hopefully learned even more from. So I've always been a big believer that if you want to find the truth in life, don't pass music by. And I think there's so much to be gained from music in our world, and all different types of music. I'm not tied to any one genre, if you will. But yeah,
I love
I
it.
definitely would have gone back to the 60s and 70s, late 60s, early 70s. So
That's fantastic. Well, that could happen. So we've got one more minute, and since we're on the topic of music and we can see your elaborate album collection behind you, what's your number one most favorite album off of those two shelves?
Oh my gosh, probably Captain Beyond is the first intro album, which were members of Armed Butterfly and other groups as well. And that's it's a rare out of print album that I've got, and so that's probably
Awesome.
one of my favorites. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, Ralph, it was amazing and such a pleasure to get to know a little bit more about you from on a personal side of things, and also all the great work that SAP Concur is doing. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everyone that's attending. This has been a great conversation, and hopefully a worthwhile 30 minutes for our industry partners out there.
And Jennifer, thank you so much. Thank TAMS. We greatly appreciate these opportunities, and look forward to having many more as well.
Oh, we will for sure. So we will be
Okay.
seeing you again. All right,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you at our next TAMS talk. Take care. Bye.